Those speaking, the question before the House will be on sustaining the rule of the chair. So if you agree with the ruling of the chair, you will be in a yes microphone.
Yes.
I recognize the pro microphone.
Kevin Jacobson, Governor of the Wisconsin Upper Michigan District. I believe that this amendment to the amendment is completely out of order, given that it completely expands the scope of the amendment, and therefore it should be ruled out of order because it was not provided 30 days before, and some people have been preparing arguments since these amendments were let out, and we did not have this information at the time, whereas the con side did. Thank you.
And I recognize the on microphone.
So just so you know, we were informed that this did not reach the scope of intent 2 days before House of Delegates was called to order. So we have not been able to prepare as much as we would like. But respectfully, Mr. President, I have to disagree with the ruling of the chair. The basis for the ruling was the intent of our proposed amendment to the amendment to drastically change the scope of notice of our original amendment. As chair of the body that unanimously endorsed this proposed amendment to our international bylaws, I can guarantee you that the intent of this amendment was to create fair elections through the elimination of dual nomination, and that the amendment to the amendment is within the scope of notice. The only thing the amendment to the amendment does is to further clarify the intent. This amendment to the amendment is simply adding additional language so there is no misinterpretation in the future. It cannot be subject to anyone's views and is binding in its strategic purpose. Now, the vote we will be taking shortly is not determinant of whether or not dual nomination will be allowed, but whether the amendment to the amendment should be allowed to replace the original proposed amendment. I'm going to ask that you all look at our original amendment now. You will see that we have our bylaws in print, with the proposed change to remove all of the language that allows for dual nomination. Now, how explicit is that? Where is it unclear that the strategic intent, what the strategic intent of this amendment is? The delegates at the Carolinas Econ House of Delegates session had no trouble understanding its intent and unanimously endorsed this proposed amendment. We had hundreds of delegates at our Econ get behind this amendment saying, we do not think dual nomination is fair, and this proposed amendment will end it effectively. Our own parliamentarian at the Carolinas Econ House of Delegates session was behind our amendment. He gave it its stamp of approval, saying this proposed amendment would effectively end dual nomination. Proceed. Past district governors, the current Key Club International Council, and current members from all over our organization also recognize the intent of our original proposed amendment. When opening the booklet, they saw this amendment.
Thank you.
I believe that the chair's ruling on this matter was correct. It seems a simple question to me that the original amendment simply did not eliminate dual nomination from our organization. This proposed amendment does. It seems like a very binary choice for me, regardless of intent, that the original amendment simply did not provide for the language to eliminate dual nomination. If in the future an amendment to eliminate dual nomination were proposed, it should be done 30 days before ICON, just like every other amendment. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the on microphone.
As the pro microphone just pointed out, that it was not about intent. The whole point of striking it out of order based on the scope of notice is because it expands beyond the intent of the original amendment. So yes, this is about intent, and the original intent of the amendment, though not necessarily worded correctly, was to prohibit dual nomination. Thus, the intent is still the same, it's just making a clarification.
Yeah. Could we, this is about scope of the amendment, correct? Not intent?
Scope of the amendment, not intent.
Scope of the amendment. Effect, not intent.
Due to the amendment not being submitted 30 days prior to the International Convention, it has not given a attendees the ability to analyze and go through specifically what the amendment is saying. Yes, you are describing what the amendment is to us, but everyone processes things differently. And so if you're not giving us the ability to go through, read it, and process what is going on just by describing it to us, you're describing it potentially biased, so we have not been able to create our own bias based on the amendment. Therefore, I think we should go with what the chair is saying.
Chair recognizes the con microphone.
Isabel Salzman, Carolina, Governor. It is clearly possible to establish the idea that our original proposed amendment was created in order to end the dual nomination of presidential and vice presidential candidates. This amendment to the amendment simply clarifies the language of the original amendment and prevents anyone, staff, volunteers, students, and otherwise from misinterpreting or construing the elections process. This amendment essentially protects the voices and intent of the students present in the 75th House of Delegates session, representing 270,000 members of Keep Up International, and ensures that we will be heard and understood without question. The scope of notice isn't drastically changed at all or even partially changed. This amendment to the amendment is well within the scope of notice. Therefore, I am asking that you all vote in favor of our appeal.
It's on this.
There is one clear way to know whether to vote in favor of our appeal and disagree with the chair, and it's that if when you read the
This is not in the scope of
for the
notice.
first time and recognize that it would end dual nomination, then you must vote in favor of the
You have to be
appeal
30
and
days
against
within the
the
scope.
of the chair. It is that simple.
It's not.
And against the simple fact that the original amendment would not eliminate dual nomination.
The intent of the Carolinas district may have been to eliminate dual nomination, and even if we were voting on the intent of the amendment, the Carolinas district did not specifically state any strategic intent with their amendment, and many districts actually have in their bylaws amendments without specifically stating whether or not dual elections are allowed, and they allow dual elections between elected and appointed positions. So both in Robert Rules of Order and just through convention with other districts, it defaults to will do nominations, and so the intent of the bylaws is not clear, and the scope is being changed by this amendment to the amendment.
Point of clarification. Anything that is not specifically addressed in our bylaws will be followed back on Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order does allow dual nomination. Con microphone. You cannot speak again until everybody who has wished to speak is spoken.
Should I just wait here until more people come to the mic, or?
Either someone else can at the con microphone can speak, or we'll go back to the pro microphone. The chair recognizes the pro microphone.
Mr. President, I move to postpone this debate indefinitely for purposes of confusion for both pros and cons of adding an amendment to the amendment.
No. What is your intent?
My intent is to suspend the debate for this until the next session of Keep Icon, so that way we don't have to worry about it now.
What? What?
Not a proper motion, so the chair will have to strike that. Thank you.
Thomas Watson, Illinois, Eastern Iowa District Governor. I believe it is obvious from this proposed amendment that we are trying to end dual nomination in our bylaws. I believe that the amendment to the amendment further clarifies this, and it is not beyond the scope of the proposed amendment.
Point of clarification. This is out of scope of reason, not out of scope of intent. Thank you.
Frank D'Agostino, New Jersey District Governor.
That's my governor!
Although the intent may seem like their intent may seem obvious from their removal, but it is not explicitly stated. They only left the conference on expertise to consideration of candidates for the office of trustee with no other explanation saying what happens to dual nomination. So therefore it falls to the Robert Rules, which is dual nomination, because they only removed what was there. and reading that to assume what their intent was is not proper because they did not explicitly say it.
Kalante Charlemagne, immediate past governor of the Florida District. The main argument from the pro side against allowing the church to approve this appeal that I'm hearing is that the Carolinas District did not propose this amendment 30 days in advance. However, the Carolinas District's original amendment is explicit in intent, and how were they expected to do this if they were not informed until 2 days prior of House of Delegates? Are the only districts that have to serve under a duly nominated trustee, as I'll be built by no longer on the international board. We've actually spoken with our international trustee, who was also in favor of the amendment, as he felt that he was not prepared to undertake a position that he did not originally desire.
For 5 more minutes on this amendment. There will be 5 more minutes on this amendment. The chair recognizes the pro microphone.
King lovers, I am the Rocky Mountain District Governor. Regardless of what I think about dual nomination, when I look at history, I see something that has been changed entirely. With less than 1 sentence remaining, this amendment is a Frankenstein of what it used to be, scratched together and taken apart, and many think that I didn't have time to read it and totally prepare it and feel confident enough to vote on it. For that reason, I believe that the ruling was correct, because there's no way for me to analyze the words and truly come to my own consensus during our time.
Michaela Hassan, immediate past district governor of the California, Nevada, Hawaii, Cleveland district. First, I would like to move to extend debate by 15 minutes.
Ooh. Second.
Just to clarify, this violates...
We have point of order. We have to vote. All in favor? All opposed? Correct.
However, I would like to once again point out that the House can make amendments.
Point of clarification. Scope of reason is different from intent, correct?
Scope of notice. My bad. Scope of notice is different from intent. It is scope of notice.
So it violates, can you clarify why?
It violates scope of notice because the intent of the amendment has been changed.
The intent or the effect?
Because the language goes, the language extends beyond the original language that's proposed. The original proposal.
So it changes the effect.
And the intent.
That is the advice of the parliamentarian, is that my interpretation of the amendment as it was written is that it does not eliminate dual candidacy, and people are arguing that that was the intent of the amendment, but you have to deal with the language, not the intent.
Thank you very much.
With all due respect, Key Club is an international high school service organization, and I believe that most people, when they read this amendment, interpreted this as the intent to eliminate dual nomination. And the House can make amendments to amendments in session without violating scope of notice because the intent is the same. As the intent is the same, I believe that it does not violate scope of notice. And once again, I would like to point out that the Carolinas district that proposed this amendment was not informed about its its interpretation until 2 days before convention. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the pro microphone.
Abby Gibson, Texas Oklahoma District Governor. I would like to point out that whether or not the Carolinas district was informed that this was not following their original intention, when proposing amendment to the international bylaws, you should take into account all the factors that go into it. So, you should, when proposing, you should realize that by removing this and not having this clause in the first place, we'll default back to Robert's Rules of Order. Additionally, you were informed 2 days before, which is 2 days more than the entire delegation had to reflect upon this, so you had time to prepare your own speeches and objections towards this. Thank you.
Point of order. The Carolinas District was informed of this 2 days before when we submitted this back in April.
The chair recognizes the comment.
Lakin Gross, from the Carolinas District. Respectfully, I would like to point out that the pro side feels that they've been cheated of the time to look over this amendment and think about it and research. But I'd like to point out that this amendment is trying to save the candidates that we have that are facing the dual nomination from having to go through the whole experience of possibly not being able to run for their, or be a part of it.
You are on the substance of the amendment, not the scope of it.
There we go.
Point of information, I just would like to ask, where does it say that we revert back to Robert's Rules of Order when it's not stated in the bylaws?
It's in your bylaws. It says, I can find the exact language, but it's...
Item 5, Section 2 of the International Bylaws.
May the delegates in the House be able to read the bylaws for themselves, stating that we revert back to Robert's Rules of Order.
What?
May we be able to read May we be able to read where in the bylaws it says that we revert back to Robert's Rules of Order when we eliminate the language? Can you state it?
Article 25, Authority Beyond the Bylaws. Section 2, the latest edition of Robert's Rules of Order shall be the parliamentary authority for all matters of procedure not specifically defined by the bylaws or board policies of the Club International.
Thank you.
The chair recognizes the pro.
Abby Vanderloo, William District, and I would simply like to bring up the fact that I, as well as many others here, read it exactly how it was proposed on the page. We can't read minds. We are human. We read it the way that it was written. We didn't know how you intended it. We can't read what you're thinking. And we didn't know how you meant it to be, because that's not how it was written on the page.
Point of information, why does falling back on Robert's rules allow dual nomination?
Point of clarification, are you asking us to determine why Robert's Rules of Order are how they are?
I want to know where it says dual nomination is allowed. Why we're falling back on it? Thank you, Bill Kevin.
If and when we get back to the amendment itself, that question is relevant to the substance of the amendment and not to the ruling of the chair.
Frank, go! Go up! Yes!
Chair recognizes the pro.
Yes, of course.
The Carolinas, Alexander Eston from the Michigan District. The Carolinas proposed this amendment months in advance and didn't know that when they struck this from the Key Club International laws, that it would eventually fall back to Robert's Rule of Order. So why should we right now fix their mistake for them, even though they had months in advance to research and know that when they struck this, it was just going to fall back to do a lot of
Hello, my name is Nathan Mann, Lieutenant Governor of the Carolinas District. I'd like to propose a 30-minute recess to allow for the...
No!
Immediate previous question.
Woo!
To vote on that.
For immediate previous question, to vote on the amendment to the amendment.
Any question is the appeal, not the amendment to the amendment. Do you wish to close the debate on the appeal?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second!
All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Nay! The affirmative debate is now closed on the appeal. The question before the delegates is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? A yes vote will support the ruling of the chair, and the proposed floor amendment would not be in order. A no vote will oppose the ruling of the chair and would allow the proposed floor amendment to be considered. A majority in the negative is required to overturn the ruling of the chair. Are there any questions about what your vote will mean? If there are, you may wish to call on the parliamentary team.
Can you point out?
If there are no questions,
Clarification. Okay. So if we vote pro or we vote aye, that means we are voting to sustain your vote. Okay.
it will be out of order if you vote, if the majority votes yes.
Okay.
Are there any further questions?
No.
Seeing that there are none, all those in favor of sustaining the ruling of the chair, please raise your voting cards. Is there further discussion on the original amendment?
Oh God. Are you serious?
Did we ever begin debate on the original amendment?
Yes, that was part of
Too late to object to the consideration of the question.
Yes. The debate has been open. There are 6 minutes left. The chair recognizes the pro microphone.
Ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear to you on what just happened. The voices of 270,000 high school students around the world were just silenced based off of a technicality. This afternoon, regardless of how the vote splits, dual nomination will not be
Point of clarification, did you poll 270,000 key clubbers and
The remarks that were just given were not in order. Will the pro microphone contain itself the remarks on the amendment itself, not the appeal?
However, we cannot give up our fight for fair elections. In the next few minutes, the small steps we take now will be giant leaps for our student leadership. We have started the conversation. Each and every one of you has started the conversation. We saw this this morning in the nominating conference. Our delegates are aware. They are knowledgeable. It is up to us now to act in this House of Delegates session. The Carolinas District will keep fighting the good fight to make sure that the voices of all members are heard and their interests are protected. This is a conversation that all districts should be a part of, and the Carolinas wants to hear our opinions heard and the opinions of other districts heard at this stage, at this House of Delegates. We want to hear what other members are thinking. We do not want to be silenced. We do not want you to be silenced. None of us want our members to be silenced. Today, let the record show your opinions. Your voices will be heard, your members will be heard. A vote in favor of this amendment will show next year's icons, House of Delegates, that dual nomination is an important issue. That we care about this. That we all want fair elections. And that we will not be silenced. Let your voice be recorded and vote on dual nominations regardless of what the effects of what just happened will occur. Let history know what you think of dual nomination. Let us all be a catalyst for change. Thank you.
To be clear, dual nomination is voted on every year at nominating conference. If we do not believe that dual nomination is fit for our candidates of the year, it will not be approved, such as this year, in which case the presidential candidates were not offered dual nomination. The current state of the amendment, which wouldn't even be changed if this amendment was passed, allows for our organization to properly vote the candidates.
I don't think we vote.
extending debate for 10 minutes, please raise your name badges. Please lower your name badges. If you are against extending debate for 10 minutes, please raise your name badge.
It's a majority. It's a majority. It's a dub.
Seeing that 2/3 did not decide to extend debate, debate is not extended.
Point of information, where does Robert's Rules of Order say that it falls back to the nomination?
That was about the bylaws, not about Robert's Rules.
We will get that answer as soon as we can. Until the meantime, please remain quiet while we are searching. We can continue with the debate while we look for the answer.
Good afternoon. Wait, is this my turn? Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Jen Spell, and I am the immediate past governor of the Alabama District. At last year's International Convention in San Antonio, I had the opportunity to attend the nominating conference, which, as Katie has mentioned earlier, is a meeting after caucusing and before House of Delegates each year that narrows down the ballot for president, vice president, and trustee. This is also the meeting where 99 delegates vote as to give dual nomination to the presidential and vice presidential candidates. Or is it? As someone who has sat through the nominating conference, I can say that the vote at this point is just a formality. I know that past governors know that as well. Even the candidates know that. I can guarantee that there are some candidates that choose to run for president and vice president, knowing that they will lose the office or will be elected international trustee. I can personally say that if I had not decided to run for governor, I was playing Trump for vice president to ensure that I had an office. This is an injustice to not just the office of president and vice president, but to trustee as well. All offices are losing their prestige in this process. The reason why the vote is a formality is because those 99 delegates aren't aware of what's going on. Yes, during nominating conference, they do
Point of clarification, you can deny dual nomination.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. Yes, during non-con, they do explain that the candidates are duly nominated and what that means, and they can deny. But they do not explain its negative consequences they've all been hearing about this afternoon. Those 99 delegates deciding dual nomination are unaware of its true impact until it's too late.
Time is up.
Page 432, Robert's Rules of Order, newly revised, 11th edition. Line 15, the same person can be nominated for more than one office, even if voting for all offices take place at the same time on a single ballot. If one person is elected to more than one office under these conditions, the case is resolved as described. And it gives another reference. Your bylaws actually tell how the case is resolved. The person must accept the highest office.
We will now vote on the amendment. All those in favor, please say aye.
I just got so.
There are less than 2/3 in the affirmative, and the amendment is not adopted.
Division of the House, please. Division of the House.
Division of the House. The division of the House has been called. We will now go to a standing vote. To vote in the affirmative of the amendment, please raise your name badge.
No, but oh my God.
Please lower your name badge. Those who are in the affirmative, and it is not adopted.